Tick, tock, tick, tock. Time is slipping away, prisoners. The end is upon us. There's not much time left before everything burns to ashes. You've proven yourself a more than capable prisoners with all the expeditions you've cleared up to this point. And now it's time to finish what you started 4 years ago. The stage is set. The other actors are dead, and it's almost time for the final curtain call. Hello everyone, Professor Scaly here, and welcome to the R8E2 level guide. As always, we're starting off with your loadout, and for this one, I highly recommend you bring with you a bio tracker, a mine deployer, a seafoam launcher, and a sniper sentry. Reason for the bio tracker is because information is crucial in this mission. We need to be very fast and efficient, otherwise that timer is going to go all the way down to 0, and we're going to lose the level because of the nightmare surge alarm that initiates from it. So we need to make our way through these zones as quickly as we can. And in order to do that safely, it's good to have a bio tracker with us so we know roughly how many enemies are on the other side of that door we're about to go through, where the generous amount of scouts are in this mission, and we can tag them in advance. And also, there are plenty of shadow type enemies in this level, so unless all 4 of you feel like running thermal weapons, highly recommend you bring a bio tracker just to make everything go by much more smoothly. As for the mine deployer and seafoam launcher, classic combination here. We're going to be shutting, mining, and seafoaming doors during some of the alarms in this level. There are 2 alarms in particular where the scans are going to take a very long time to complete, and throughout those alarms, pretty much nothing but nightmare enemies are going to be coming after us, and as we've seen with previous missions, alarms that spawn in pretty much nothing but nightmares deplete your resources incredibly quickly. There's also plenty of scouts in this mission, a lot of different types, nightmare scouts, crawling scouts, charger scouts. So being able to seafoam the nightmare scout or the charger scouts or anything else you can't really safely melee kill can help prevent a giant chain reaction going off that will very quickly end your run. And then when it comes to that sniper sentry, reason why I recommend this one specifically is because we're dealing with a lot of nightmare enemies when it comes to the alarms. And during the reactor portion, we're dealing with not only a fair amount of nightmares, but also a lot, and I do mean a lot, of giant strikers and shadow giants. So we need a sentry that hits incredibly hard to deal with all these powerful enemies, and the sniper sentry by far is the best one for this job. As for your weaponry, again, I will recommend a few specific things. Kind of like R8E2, you are facing off against a fair amount of things like nightmares, as well as tanks and berthers. So having a scatter gun on the team helps out tremendously because you can make very quick work of tanks and berthers if you know how to do it right. Things like hell guns and hell rifles are also great. They're really good at dealing with nightmares as well as pretty much any other type of enemy in the game, so good call there. And then maybe a machine gun if you want as your 4th, or you could do something like high cal or whatever. Just make sure that not only can you deal with the big, powerful, tanky enemies, but you can also deal with wave clear because there are going to be moments where you have hordes of enemies coming after you all at once. Again, by no means do you have to run these 4 specific weapons. I just like them a lot, but I have completed it a few times using other type of guns, so by no means is it a necessity. Dropping down into the level, you'll see that your main objective is to bring the matter wave projector with you all the way to zone 497, and you and your teammates will be starting off inside zone 490. Now, right off the get-go, this zone will have no enemies in it, no resources to collect, just simply the matter wave projector in that drop, and there will be a terminal along the way, which you'll want to get onto. It quickly put in an admin override command, because as you can see at the top of your screen, there is a timer that is continuously ticking down. And if that timer goes all the way down to 0, your run is basically over unless you're at the very end of the mission already, because once that timer hits 0, it initiates a nightmare surge alarm that will never go away. Thankfully though, along the way, there are going to be terminals in every single one of the zones. Not every single terminal along the way, but a majority of them you could put this admin command into, which will give you additional time so you can actually make it further to the mission before the surge initiates. If you activate every single terminal along the way, which ideally you will, you'll have roughly an hour and 33 minutes from the moment you start the mission until that surge alarm will activate no matter what. So starting off, one person picks up the matter wave, the other people just go on ahead, someone gets on the terminal and puts the command into it. and then you'll just keep going until you find the security door to 491. This door is just going to be an open security door, and in here is when things start getting dangerous. Pretty much any zone from this point on could consist of a fair amount of different types of enemies. You could see things like regular strikers as shooters, giant strikers, giant shooters, hybrids, shadow strikers, shadow giants, nightmare strikers and nightmare shooters, as well as other powerful enemies. So be aware, you will have to either aggressively melee kill your way through these areas, since you cannot take your time due to that timer at the top of your screen, or you're going to have to shoot a lot of those giants. Best to conserve your ammunition when you can, but finding resource packs along the way is also incredibly important. When you're putting those admin commands in, highly recommend you ping the ammo and tool and medkits in the zones, because you need as much of those as you can for the first portion of this mission. So an overall guide, I guess, of what you should do is just aggressively but quickly get through these zones. Realize you don't have to kill every single room. Sometimes you could just sneak right past, just kill anything that's right in your way that needs to die. And when you get to the terminals, quickly use them to figure out where the resources are, go back and collect them if need be, and keep pushing forward. Another good thing to do is shut doors behind you, so when you do have to go loud, you're not waking up any of the previous rooms you just went through. But continuing back on with zone 491, sorry for that quick little tangent there. In this zone, along with those other enemies I mentioned earlier, you will always see 2 charger scouts, 1 crawling scout, 1 normal scout patrolling about, as well as a sleeping birther somewhere. Now, they could be off at some of the side rooms, so you could completely ignore them, but you just want to make your way through, kind of like you could see in the background footage. When you get to the final room where that security door is, you will be able to find a terminal up above. This terminal will give you an additional 5 minutes. And of course, you can use it to ping any of the resource packs in the zone. Good chance some of them might be behind you. If that's the case, just figure out which room number it is and have 1 or 2 people quickly go back for it while the other people keep pushing ahead. Security door to zone 492 is going to be another open security door. Now scan anything tied to it. This zone is going to be a respawn zone, and in here there are going to be 3 charger scouts patrolling about, a sleeping birther, and a sleeping tank, as well as a terminal that I believe is in the second room at the far left side of it that will give you an additional 5 minutes. Then just continue down the path that you see my team taking. When you get into this room, shut the door behind you, of course, and in here to the right of you upon entering in, you will find a security door to zone 493. This security door is going to have a class 3 stealth scan tied to it. Once you get all the scans done though, you can drop off the matter wave in the room here. You don't have to bring it with you, because you're then going to go into that zone and make your way towards the back of it where you'll find another terminal. Throughout this zone though, a lot more enemies, including 4 crawling scouts, 1 charger scout, 1 normal scout, and there will be a sleeping tank. So just make your way through, meleeing your way through the enemies, or seek it past them best as you can. Again, speed is key, but you also don't want to be overly aggressive, and you'll just keep making your way until you get to the back end where you will find the terminal. This terminal will have another command you can put into it. This will give you an additional 6 minutes, and there will also be a command that will put a full team scan right next to the terminal, and you'll need to finish that full team scan in order to unlock the security door to zone 494, which is where we're going to head to next. Once you get back to zone 493, you can pick up the matter wave and then just make your way to the northern end of it. In that next room, you will be able to find the security door to zone 494, which is going to have a class 4 stealth scan tied to it. And I highly recommend whatever is in this room with you, you go on ahead and kill. Because the next zone you're heading into, the first room, is quite large, and more often than not, you will have to go guns loud in there, and you don't want to wake up anything from behind you. Once you are done though, you can then grab the matter wave, open up that security door, and head inside. And zone 494 itself, this is also going to be a respawn zone. There's going to be 1 shadow scout, 1 crawling scout, and 2 normal scouts somewhere in the zone, as well as 2 sleeping birthers. And as I mentioned, the first room is quite large, so good chance you will have some of them in here. But because you cleared out the previous room, if you need to go guns crazy and shoot a birther or a scout or 2, by all means you can go on ahead and do that. But once you clear out everything in the first room, you will be able to find a terminal in here, which this command will give you an additional 9 minutes. And not only do you want to ping the resources in the zone with this terminal, but you also want to ping the 2 power cells. Now, you only need 1 of these 2 to progress. You don't have to grab both of them, but figure out where both of them are, as sometimes one of them could be in a really difficult spot to get to, while the other one is actually fairly close. Once you get it though, go over to the northwestern end of the room through the small door there, clear out every single enemy that is in that room, and somewhere in that room you'll be able to find the next security door to zone 495, as well as a generator next to it, which is where you have to plug that power cell in to unlock that security door. But before we actually go about doing this, we need to clear out a little bit more. We have to go to the southwestern corner of the zone and clear out the 2 rooms over there, or at least we have to clear out the first one, because anything that's in that room can and will get pulled in during the upcoming alarm. Once you have gotten all the rooms cleared though that you need to, you are then going to go back and start setting up your defenses for this, because the security door to 495 is going to have a scan 6 alarm tied to it. And as you can see with this map overlay, there are 2 different locations enemies could spawn from. As you can see as well, these enemies are going to be nightmare strikers and shooters. And what we're going to want to do is the 3 doors I have labeled. You want to make sure all of them are shut, mined, and seafoamed, except for that far western door. You don't need to mine that one, but definitely do seafoam it. And then when it comes to your sniper sentry, this door right here, I would say place it on the outside facing straight south. That way any enemy who comes from down south who runs for that door will be in the line of sight of that sentry pretty much all the way across the room. Combine that with Biotracker Symbiosis and it'll actually pick off a pretty fair amount of them. But that's about it when it comes to setup. You're going to want to make sure you conserve a fair amount of seafoam because these scans can take quite a while to finish. You're going to have to do a sustained scan, then I believe it is a big red scan, 2 full team scans, and then 2 more sustained scans. And all 3 of those sustained scans are very lengthy, so you'll be here for quite a while. So seafoam person, keep seafoam in the door over and over again. If you have seafoam grenades, great time to use them would be right here. Seafoam trip mines, you have those as well. Those work perfectly because if you position them on the truck, kind of like you see in the background footage, then you could pretty easily just shoot it to have it automatically refilm that door and it'll buy you even more time. Once everything's taken care of though, and you have the sentry, you can then head into zone 495. Now, when it comes to the zone, I would recommend don't have everybody go in here right away because keep in mind the zone behind you is a respawn zone. So the moment all 4 of you go into 495, every single room is going to respawn except for the one that's directly connected to you, which means if something goes wrong in the first room, like a scout waking up or anything that forces you to shoot, you're stuck in that room and you cannot back up. As for zone 495 itself, throughout here, a fair amount of different rooms you can go through. You're going to want to clear out every single one of these rooms, leave no survivors in the zone. It's going to consist of a fair amount of enemies, as well as a Shadow Scout, a Nightmare Scout, and 2 Charger Scouts, so 4 scouts in total, and there will also be a sleeping tank. In the second room, there is a terminal that you can use. This terminal will give you an additional 8 minutes, and there will also be a fair amount of resources in here, as well as your very first bulkhead key and the bulkhead door control and the door to your secondary objective. Now, when it comes to the Matterwave projector, you can leave it up north by the far northern security door. We'll be coming back here quite a bit later. The bulkhead door control is down in the southeastern corner. So once you collect all of the enemies, you grab the resources, go on ahead and do that. This bulkhead door control gives you access to the secondary objective. So it'll unlock the bulkhead door over to the west to zone 617. And once you've taken care of everything in here and you've gotten that door unlocked, you want to go over there and do it. Because the thing is, even though it is labeled as a secondary objective, the secondary is not optional in this mission. You have to complete it in order to finish the mission. So we're going to head over there first because the secondary objective is quite a bit more challenging than the rest of main. Now, upon entering into zone 617, you'll see the secondary objective is to find the reactor and bring it back online, and it's always going to be located inside zone 618. As for 617 itself, there will be resources in here, although no enemies to deal with, and at the back end of it, you'll find the security door to 618, which is going to be a full team scan. And upon opening up that security door, you'll be granted an additional 22 minutes. And even though that's a fair amount, you want to still work quickly because this reactor will take a little bit of time to complete. As for 618 itself, no enemies in here, but there will be a lot of resources, so quickly run around, figure out where things are, and once you're good to go to the terminal in the mill and initiate the reactor sequence. Now, when it comes to the reactor, there are 3 different waves you're going to have to deal with. Wave 1 will consist of regular strikers and shooters, a fair amount of giant strikers, a wave of flyers who will actually spawn in the reactor room itself around the 1 minute mark, I believe, depending on exactly how you play. It could vary a little bit depending on how quickly you kill those enemies. And there will also be a few shadow giants who spawn fairly early on into the wave, if I recall correctly. When it comes to wave 2, similar thing, you're still going to have regular strikers and shooters. There are going to be a lot of giant strikers. You still have a wave of flyers that spawn in the reactor itself, but you no longer have to worry about shadow giants, although there will be a tank who spawns in, I think, around the halfway point of this sequence. As for the third and final wave, this is where things get incredibly brutal, because the only type of enemies you deal with are nightmare strikers and shooters, 3 tanks who do not all spawn in at the same time, but they spawn in, I believe, at like the 1/3 mark, 2/3, and almost at the end, And then you're going to deal with a lot, and I mean a whole lot, of shadow giants. I've had times where I think I've seen 15 of these guys alive at the same time, which is not a pleasant experience. So those are the type of enemies you can expect to see. As you saw, a lot of giants, hence why I recommend the sniper sentry. It's going to help out quite a bit. But how you want to deal with each of these waves. It's similar for the most part, but we do change it up as we go into it. So when it comes to the first wave, what I like to do is have the sniper sentry positioned outside the bulkhead door, facing up to the north, I believe is the direction. That way, as enemies are coming down the staircase and going towards the bulkhead door, they'll get shot by it before they even enter into the sector. As for all of us, we will stay inside of the reactor room until we hear the first wave spawn in, because this makes it so it spawns a little closer to us. We can kill those initial few enemies faster. Then we just rush out and we use the bulkhead door itself as a little funnel point. And defending against these enemies for the most part isn't too difficult if you know how to shoot your guns properly. The only real challenging thing would be that wave of flyers, but if you have somebody with a hell gun or hell rifle, well, you can do what you can see me doing in the background footage, which is just simply, once you see you're getting close to the 1 minute mark, camp by the security door to the reactor itself, and the moment you see them spawn in, just very quickly start shooting them, because they spawn in giant clusters all on top of each other. So with a hell rifle, which one-shots them, you can very easily kill almost the entirety of the flyer wave if you're fast with your shots. And the same thing applies pretty much to wave 2 as well. You actually don't really change up your strategy whatsoever. Sentry stays in the same spot, you play it the same way. The only real thing you have to do differently is dealing with that tank who spawns in, I think, about halfway through the wave, which you can either rush them down when there's pretty much no other enemies alive. Using the pillars and the columns in that room actually helps out quite a bit, because you can get some good cover and get behind him quickly. Or you could just simply delay him using those pillars and wait until you kill pretty much everything else from the reactor wave until he's the only thing left, and then you could just all focus him as a team. As for the third and final wave, the way we're going to defend this one is quite a bit differently. I know we haven't talked about the zones we're heading into for the codes yet, don't worry, we'll get to that next. But when it comes to the third wave, we have opened up a new spawn location, specifically the one all the way to the far west. So what I like to do for it is, in that first room to the west, there are going to be 3 doors, so I will make sure all 3 of them are shut. I will mine them, but do not C-foam them, because that will actually delay the waves a little bit, so just simply mine them. And then I like to hold out over on the western side and have my sentry facing back over to the east. Reason for this is because anything that comes from the east is spawned pretty far away, and they have to run across the entire reactor room, so sniper sentry can get some pretty good shots from behind us, while we just focus on anything that spawns really close. I like to just hold out here best I can. Biotracker, very crucial that you keep your head on a swivel and just tag those enemies, especially when you start getting a lot of these shadow giants. And when the tank shows up, if nothing else is nearby, deal with him as quickly as you can, and don't let him stay alive too long, because if he's alive for a while, then you're going to get a giant wave of shadow giants that comes on you, and dealing with that and the tank at the same time is not a good idea. Also, if you're forced further back into the reactor room, you don't really have cover from the tank, so he can do a lot of damage to you pretty quickly. If need be, you can go on ahead and fall back to the pillar room. Just keep in mind that dealing with a tank in the pillar room, while that's a little bit easier, if there are 2 tanks alive or a ton of nightmares or shadow giants and the tank alive in there, it can get hectic very quickly. But that's really all there is to it when it comes to defending the third wave. It's very situational, so good luck to you and your teammates. But with that, now let's actually talk about the codes themselves and the zones you have to go into, because of course, none of those 3 codes are going to be given to you for free. So once you're done defending against the first wave of enemies, the security door to zone 619, which I believe is the northern door, is going to unlock. This door is going to have a full team scan tied to it, and the room itself is one long corridor room, and in here there will be 1 crawling scout, 1 sleeping tank, a pretty fair amount of regular shadow strikers, as well as a few hybrids. What I like to do is just simply shoot that crawling scout in the head with a hell rifle or any long-range weapon that could kill it, and then I fall back over to the eastern side near that security door, and then place down my sniper sentry in advance and let all the enemies come to me. Deal with them from afar, get rid of the shadows and the hybrids, use that pillar room to just kite around and deal with the tank effectively afterwards, and once everything is dead, you can then have 2 people go in while 2 people stay outside. And then inside of that room, there's also going to be 3 corrupt scans, and you definitely don't want to touch these, because that second and third one will spawn in a tank if you touch them, The first one though is actually a whole lot worse, because touching this scan will teleport you out to a desert arena where you'll have to defend against a few waves of nightmares before you automatically get teleported back. Thankfully, these corrupt scans, while it looks like you can't get past them, the lights will go out every so often in this room, and when they do, the scans disappear. And once they go out, you have plenty of time to run all the way to the other end and get past all 3 scans before they come back on. So wait for the lights to go out, run across, get all the resources over there and resupply. Also make sure you get the code from the terminal, which will always be at the back end of the room. And once you're good to go, recite it to your teammates, they put it in, and the moment they put it in, the lights will go out, which will make it so you can immediately run back out and join up with your teammates and go get ready to defend against the second wave. Once you're done dealing with the second wave, the western security door to zone 620 is then going to unlock, this door also taking a full team scan to open it up. And zone 620, it's fairly large, a lot of different rooms to it, and throughout this zone you can expect to see things like strikers and shooters, as well as a fair amount of giant strikers and hybrids. So either stick together and melee like crazy, or split up a bit and don't be afraid to go guns ho, just to deal with the giants and the hybrids. And there's actually going to be a total of 4 different terminals inside these zones, and they can spawn in a few different locations. But all you really need to do is just split up, find one of them, and then use it to ping the correct terminal if the one you found isn't the one itself. Then of course, spend some time, grab the resources in here, make sure you supply up. Since the third wave is by far the hardest one to deal with, highly recommend heal everybody up as much as you can, either all the way to 80 or 100% if you can manage it. Make sure that the sentry is looking good on tool refill, and everybody's ammunition is looking good, and ideally everybody's holding onto an ammo pack, because you're going to be doing so much shooting during that third wave, more likely than not, you're going to go through all of your ammunition and need a bit of a refill halfway through. But once you put the second code in and you're good to go, defend it against the third wave, do your absolute best to survive. If you are able to get to the end of the third wave and kill everything, you can then go to the southern security door to zone 621, which just unlocked. Another full team scan you're going to have to do to open it up though. And this zone itself is actually pretty troll. In here are going to be a lot of Shadow Strikers, as well as 2 Shadow Scouts and 2 Sleeping Birthers, and there's also corrupt scans all over the place. But thankfully, the terminal is actually immediately to the left of you upon entering into the room. So all you really need to do is just do the full team scan, don't open the door right away, wait for the scouts to go further into the room so they're nowhere close to you, so you can ideally get in, get the code from the terminal, get out without them coming near you, and then also use the biotracker as well as thermal weapons if you do have them to see if there are any shadows really close to the left. If so, I recommend person with a seafoam launcher just spray seafoam all over the place to try to freeze them in place. While one person, the moment that door opens up, just crouch walk, go around the corner, do your best to not accidentally fall down the little ledge like I did in my run, because if you do, you might wake something up. Get on the terminal, recite to your teammates, and they just put it into the central reactor terminal just to ensure you don't have to redo the third wave. Then you just ideally want to sneak your way out and just forget about the resources in here. There's a good amount of them, but it's not worth it. If things go wrong though, and you do end up waking it up, my recommendation is just run back up north and hide out there, because you can actually have a nice funnel way and you can try to deal with most of the enemies before the birthers rush you. But assuming you were able to sneak past the shadows and you got the code and you put it in, the reactor sequence will be finished, and it will also give you an additional 5 minutes. So at this point, just make sure you get out of that side of the room and nobody's near it so nothing wakes up, and then just grab any of the resources nearby you left behind, resupply as best you can, and then book it out of here as quickly as you can and continue on with the rest of the main objective. So back to the main objective. We're in zone 495 now. We're actually going to go to the northern end to the security door to 596 where we left the matter wave earlier, as that door is now unlocked since we finished the reactor. This door is just going to have a full team scan tied to it, and inside of there, no enemies whatsoever, but there will be a lot of resources, as well as a terminal that will grant us an additional 3 minutes. So we're just going to go in here, take the matter wave all the way to the northern end and leave it by that security door, which is still under the lockdown, and then go throughout this room, grab the resources. Highly recommend heal up as much as you can, because we are about to deal with another scan 6 alarm as nothing but nightmare enemies, and then ideally have 2 people carry ammo packs with them and 2 people carry tool refills. But once you've gotten all the resources in here, just go back out, go to the eastern side of 495 where you find the security door to 498, and this is the one that's going to have the scan 6 alarm tied to it. And as you can see with this map overlay, there are a few different locations enemies can spawn from, and how we're going to want to set up for this. Every single one of the doors I have highlighted, you're going to want to make sure you shut, mine, seafoam, and I would actually say on some of the outer doors, double mine them if you can, just to try to increase the chances of everything blowing up. If you can get a mine facing towards the small doors, which I believe every single one of them you actually can, it's also great because, of course, parallel mines are not the best on small doors because not as many enemies could pile up against it, but having a perpendicular and parallel mine will do a lot of good work. As for your sentry, it doesn't really matter too much where you place it. I kind of like to have it somewhere near the northwestern door that leads into my room on the outside, so shoot at enemies as they approach it or as they're trying to break it down. But you could also do the same thing to the southeastern door. But like I said, make sure all the doors are shut, mined, and C-foamed. And then while you're working on the scans, same thing as the first alarm earlier, you just want to keep re-C-foaming the door over and over and over again. If you were able to bring 2, 4, or 5 use tool refill packs with you, you can actually keep the door C-foamed for a pretty long time if you don't get bad RNG and your scans on the opposite end of the room from the door that they're coming from. But once every single one of the scans have been completed, you're going to want to deal with any of the nightmares who are still left alive, and then be cautious because a queen birther is actually going to spawn in and it'll be coming after you. Now, if it's coming from down south, you want to let it come to you a little bit, because if it's all the way back in the first room of the zone and you rush out there to greet it, you shooting will actually wake up the respawn zone from earlier, so you want to let it come close enough to you, maybe into the room where the bulkhead door control is. That way your gunshots don't wake up any of the respawn stuff. If it's coming from up northwest though, then you don't have to worry about that whatsoever. Now, as for zone 498 itself, throughout here, there's going to be a fair amount of enemies, mostly just regular strikers and shooters, but there will also be some shadows and shadow giants here and there, so be cautious of them. Upon entering into the zone, if you go straight south and go through that door to the right of you, you'll immediately find the terminal of the zone, which will grant you an additional 10 minutes. And of course, you can use that terminal to ping all the resources throughout the zone. But you're just going to make your way through, room by room, clearing out the enemies as quickly as you can. And once you've gotten everything taken care of, you could go to the far northern end of it, where you will find a security door to zone 499. This door though is going to have a class 6 mixed alarm tied to it. Thankfully though, it only spawns in shadow type enemies, and the sustained scans during this one do not take forever to complete. But as you can see with this map overlay, there are a lot of potential spawn locations for these enemies. So what you're going to want to do is, just because you probably have a ton of tool refill still left over and you actually don't need a whole lot of it beyond this point, is just shut, mine, and C-foam every single one of the doors I have labeled. Then as for your sentry, I would say the staircase that leads up into the room you're in, just have it placed down on the staircase facing west so that any of the enemies who come from that general direction have to go through the line of fire of the sentry to actually get to you. And of course, it's close enough to you that you can tag those shadow enemies, so the sniper sentry will actually shoot at them. And that's it. This scan is actually not all that difficult to deal with. It is just shadow type enemies, so even if they only spawn from the open security door and your mines and C-foam doors don't put in any work, it's not that hard to actually deal with it. You just gotta keep tagging enemies for your teammates and for the sniper sentry, and once all the scans are done, just deal with any of the shadows left alive, pack up any of your mines that didn't go off, grab your sentry, and head into zone 499 itself. Now, as for zone 499, this one is a bit of a spicy zone. So this zone will have a lot, and I mean a lot, of resources in it, and there'll also be a fair amount of enemies. Small boys, giants, anywhere from 2 to 3 tanks somewhere in it, and there will be a terminal at the very far end of the room. And this terminal has 2 commands that you can put in it. One of them being the admin one, which will grant you an additional 14 minutes. The other one, though, being one that will unlock the security door to zone 545, which is where you have to head to next. However, before it actually unlocks it, you're going to have to deal with a Kraken boss that spawns in the room with you. So you're going to want to make your way through, just dealing with the rooms bit by bit. But what I would say is, before you go too far into it, make sure the boxes and lockers near the beginning of the zone, because this is where most of your resources spawn, grab those and resupply with those best you can. Because you are going to have to deal with a Kraken boss, which is going to consume a pretty fair amount of your ammunition, and you don't want to have to run all the way back up here to grab some ammo packs because you get unlucky and there's basically nothing down below. So ideally, probably have 3 people bring ammo with them, maybe even all 4 of you, or just 3 of you and 1 person brings a med pack who can heal people up in case of emergencies. Once you're good though, yeah, just make your way down to the bottom of the room, make sure everything has been killed along the way there, and then you can just put the command to the terminal and initiate the Kraken fight. Now there's a lot of cover in this area, which is actually quite nice. You can also place down your sniper sentry to help out the flyers, and you're just going to want to treat it like any other Kraken in the game. Something to be aware of though is that this fight kind of glitches a little bit, and sometimes the flyers will spawn inside of the Kraken and get completely stuck, which if this happens, once you kill the Kraken and his hitbox goes away as he falls into the abyss, a lot of those flyers are going to release and come after you all at once, which can actually overwhelm you if you're not prepared for it. Once the fight is done though, the security door to 545 from earlier we left the matter wave at is going to unlock, and at this point we're almost done with the mission. All we need to do is hightail it out of here, grab any resources along the way, but don't waste too much time because you're not going to be able to actually increase your time at all from this point on. So whatever the timer is at the top of your screen, that's how much time you have left to finish the remainder of the mission. But rush out of here, backtrack all the way to the security door to 496, head into there, grab any resources that you left behind, and then go to the northern end where you find the security door to zone 545. There are going to be no enemies in here whatsoever, but there will be resources at the beginning you can grab and resupply with. And as you continue to follow it up, you will see purple markers. One of them is going to take you to a security door. Once you go near it, it is going to cause some dialogue between the characters to play out. Then you can leave a message on the machine next to you. Once you do that, you're pretty much telling the other team, hey, we need your data cubes, and they'll send them to you over in the orange shuttle box. You can then go over to it and just wait for it to eventually open up. And once you do, you can collect the data cubes. And then at the far back end of the room in the teleportation area, there will be another marker which tells you it is time to put the Matterwave projector into it. The thing is though, once you do this, it initiates the final bit of the level, which is basically the ending of R8E2, where you're going to have 3 full team scans you're going to have to do, and they are all fairly large, or at least the first 2 are. So once you're ready, put the Matterwave projector into it and then run back to the beginning of the zone because that is where the first scan is going to appear. While you're working on the scan, and it will take a while to complete it, you're going to have to deal with regular strikers and shooters as well as some nightmare strikers and shooters. And since this is the ending of the level, you want to place down that sniper sentry in front of you as you have a beautiful one-way funnel in front of you as you can see in the footage. You're going to want to place down some mines if you have them, spray seafoam all over the floor or at least some of it, maybe save a little bit for the second and third scan, and you're just going to want to do your best to defend against these guys. Once you finish this scan, you now need to run back to the teleport room, and since there's only one staircase that you can go to get back to the top, go on ahead and seafoam it on your way up if you feel like it. But get back in there and same thing, place down a few mines if you have any left over, place down your sniper sentry, spray seafoam in front of you just to keep enemies at bay if they get too close, and get ready to hold out again, because during the second scan, you're going to have to deal with regular strikers and shooters, some normal chargers, as well as 2 snatchers who will spawn in, which be careful of them because if they happen to grab you and drag you off, that is potentially a dead run right there, and also they'll eat up any of the seafoam they run across, so if you have a lot of seafoam on the floor in front of you, make sure you kill the snatchers before they get too close to it, otherwise all that seafoam is going to be gobbled up and be completely useless. Once the second scan finishes, a third one will appear right in the middle of the teleportation pad. This one will complete fairly quickly. At this point, you're still just going to have regular strikers and shooters and chargers. And once you get the scan to 100%, you just have to hold out for a little bit because you're not going to get teleported instantly. But once you get teleported, you're home free. You can feel free to just walk around, explore a little bit, and when you're ready to officially complete the level, just head outside and make your way to the sunrise. As you make your way out there, once you go beyond a certain trigger point, you will then get a little bit of dialogue from Dr. Durant. Once it happens and the end screen pops up, you are done and you have completed R8E2. And that's all there is to it. R8E2 brings the story of GTFO to its long-awaited conclusion. But despite it all being over, there are still many unanswered questions that we may be able to solve using the hidden pieces of lore found throughout the rundowns. Although, I have a feeling that many of you are just simply going to wait for me to do it and then release a video or two explaining it all. But after seeing the ending itself, while I believe it's unlikely we'll see anything come from it for a very long while, I do believe there's always a possibility for more to come far off in the future. As always though, thank you for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do hope that I was able to provide you with some assistance in beating this mission. If you have any tips or tricks this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you'd like to say, please do let me know down in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you want to join my community, there's a link to my Discord down in the description, as well as some other links you might be interested in. Among those links being one to the official GTFO merch store, which, as always, I highly recommend you check out if you're a fellow GTFO enthusiast and you're looking to pick up some sweet merch. Until next time, you may have escaped the complex and found the freedom you've been yearning for, but my work is far from complete, as there's still a lot more content to create. So hopefully, I'll see all you wonderful people in the next video.